This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
Well, welcome to Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. And look who we've got back. If it isn't Jimmy Neutron, a.k.a. the young Casey Kasem, and I've got a lust for his hair. Dan Lust, welcome back. What's the name of your pod?
Conduct Detrimental, which we've had come up a lot recently in our sports vernacular, but Conduct Detrimental. And I appreciate the Jimmy Neutron shout, Mark. This hair doesn't do itself, okay? Jimmy's got to get a little inspiration here.
If your mom is listening, tell her that we did not say that you look like Casey Kasem. You've got Casey Kasem hair. And by the way, that shouldn't be an insult because I know Casey's daughter and she's delightful and I think she would. She might push back a little bit and say that her dad was a very handsome man.
You know what? How about this, Mark? Was Casey Kasem on the radio? Because you people used to say that if you have a face for radio, that's not the biggest compliment. So
yeah, he was on the radio, but then he made the leap. He made the leap, and America's Top 40, and I think they did TV a little bit.
One day I'll blossom. I'll blossom into
kind of a bonus episode, right, Gary?
Yeah, that's right. I went ahead and released the best of that we had scheduled for today as well. But Mark was excited. He wanted to get something in, so we all got together via Zoom here on Friday, and we're going to post this one on Saturday as well. So this is a little bonus, a fresh update, and I think we're gonna talk a little bit more about some of the cases that we covered the last time we had Dan on, because for my money, the Evander Kane thing sort of got wedged into the end, and anyone who is only heard about that story on our show, I think, has been underserved. So we'll cover that. We've got some news out of the NFL as well. Dan's got all kinds of stuff he's excited about.
So Dan, take it away.
Let's take Gary's lead. Let's start with Evander Kane. That's where the last episode I was on kind of left off. So Evander Kane, just as a brief background, if you missed the last episode, there are allegations launched against him. He's an African-American hockey player on the San Jose Sharks. The allegations are that he bet against his team and threw games and lost them on purpose.
Allegations by an ex-wife.
That's what I was going to say.
On Instagram.
On Instagram, yeah.
During a divorce.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Talk about a little source criticism.
There's a lot of qualifiers there.
We're also engaging in a little argumentum ad hominem at the same time. So go on.
Yeah, no, it's a very relevant part of the story. It's a weird world we live in. That's where the allegations were made. And if you go to the Instagram account, they're gone because they were made an Instagram story. So people that know Instagram, they disappeared in 24 hours. So just a quick whirlwind of the story. Now, it's a soon-to-be ex-wife. They're going through some type of imminent divorce proceedings. And the allegations seem to have stemmed from an email that Evander Kane sent his wife on last Saturday morning. And the email essentially gave her directions on how to clean up the house and leave the keys under the mat and all this fun stuff, all the messy stuff that comes with the divorce. So kind of messy. And why do we know about that email? Because Evander Kane's wife, Anna Kane, she's pregnant with the second kid on the way. She has one kid, posted the email. And the email was signed, thanks in advance, Evander Kane, a very cold way from a husband. And then over the course of the day, I think these are where the important allegations are. And then there's just one thing to add. But the allegations are coming in Instagram stories that he's cheating, he's abandoned her, even though she's pregnant. But again, most importantly, that he bet on his team, and the team obviously hasn't been that good recently. So there's some weight to it. So the only thing I wanted to add, which is really important to the story, husband and wife in a messy divorce, throwing allegations at each other. Sure. You could say anything and maybe, there's no truth to it. The problem here, which makes this story a little bit palpable, a little bit worrisome if you're the NHL, Evander Kane declared for bankruptcy earlier in 2021. As part of that filing, he had to acknowledge $1.5 million in gambling losses, casino gambling losses. But, if you're a heavy gambler and you lost $1.5 million, that's the type of personality that probably bets and throws games. So it's not such a far-fetched allegation as it normally would be.
1.5 million is that's real money in terms of gambling debts. And some casino gave him the credit line and he ran it up.
Yeah,
Mark,
Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead,
Dan. Gary.
I was just going to say, I mean, 1.5 is what he had to declare, but his wife is also alleging that he's doing some betting that is maybe outside of the financial institutions that you would use to declare in a divorce. You know, she has alleged that he is involved with criminals and has flown out of state to bet with them, whether at casinos or in organized, you know, underground betting situations. So it's, you know, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but I think he has a current contract that's worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 million. So to be declaring bankruptcy means it's much more than a $1.5 million gambling debt. There's a lot of other stuff at play right here. And I just to fill out Dan's note, the one part of the email that you left out was his instructions of where to leave his G-Wagon, which I thought was really funny. It was
what is a G-Wagon? I didn't know that.
That's the Mercedes. Come on, Dan. With hair like that, you got to know what a G-Wagon is, baby. It's the big SUV.
By the way, the G-Wagon is the car of choice in the city of Glendale.
Oh yeah, and Calabasas.
Black.
Yep.
Mark is very aware. My expert knowledge of sports law is like an A+. It's an insane level. You ask me about anything else that doesn't involve sports or law, it's going to be a problem. Mark is laughing because there's a story that he's not allowed to tell in the air. But
yes, I'm not allowed to bet. But when I say he's culturally challenged, there are certain
that makes it sound so much worse.
In which Dan is culturally challenged.
So here, yeah, okay, Mark, that makes it sound infinitely worse. I didn't know who some big executive in finance was. Okay, sue me, Mark.
I wish I could tell this story. It's really funny. But it's your show. You can tell the story. I can't. Not until I'm done with the deal.
Well, here we'll educate Dan. That's a G-Wagon. It's a very popular.
Clearly, it's not owned by an Armo because it's not black.
Well, this one is not black, but it's a very popular car among the wealthy soccer mom and the prominent Armo alike.
So here's where the story gets interesting, and this is why, Gary. So the contract that he signed, it's one of the richest contracts in the NHL. It's a $49 million contract over 7 years. So $7 million annual, shouldn't really be declaring bankruptcy. And now everyone's wondering, how is that possible? So Mark, for our show, we got to dig in. We can't just be talking sports. We got to know the law behind it. We checked the docket. It's about 13 active lawsuits against Evander Kane. And most of them are relating to betting. He was given like a $500,000 marker from a certain casino. So there's a lot here, right? And you could declare bankruptcy because you think your assets are going to be harmed by the amount that you're in debt. So anyway, there's something here. I think there's certainly something here.
It's interesting because I've had clients over the years who have kind of skipped out, for lack of a better term, on their markers in Vegas. And in years past, I don't know if they're still doing it. I can't remember the last time this happened, but the district attorney there locally would file criminal charges as a way to collect the money back. And it's interesting. I don't think bankruptcy could prevent a criminal filing. I'm not suggesting that Evander will get filed on, but it's just interesting that these markers, if they're from Las Vegas casinos, that the casinos have not taken a more hardline kind of take on that, because they generally do that.
Yeah, I think to where this goes, right? There's a really big stench in NHL fans, and people that are sports fans. Pete Rose was alleged to have, he said he bet on his team to win, which I don't know if that's okay, if it's not okay. But then there's the Black Sox scandal in baseball, and back in 1919, where they were alleged to have thrown a World Series. If you look at Evander Kane's statistics, this is where the interesting kind of hockey analysis goes, and we're talking about what the NHL is going to run their investigation. Mark, as listeners will know, Mark has done a lot of work with the NFL's investigative process. It's a little bit different in the NHL, so we dug into the collective bargaining agreement. But, you look at his statistics, they're pretty similar year over year. There doesn't seem to be anything that stands out. But the San Jose Sharks have finished under 500 the last 2 years. They're not a team that's been that good. And the allegations are that his gambling losses started to accrue in the last 2 years. So, there's some stuff that's adding up. So the people that are baseball fans will know that when the Major League Baseball tried to investigate the sign stealing scandal with the Houston Astros, they looked at every pitch, every swing. They tried to really figure out what happened. And they gave us some kind of a BS report, that the Astros, had some violations or whatever they said. Hockey's going to have to do that. Hockey's going to have to look at every minute this guy's on the ice. And they really want to clear the league's name. They're going to have to come up with some report like we saw back in the day in baseball, like the Mitchell report, which was the steroid report. They're going to have to interview everyone, interview all the NHL players. The interesting, Mark, from an investigative standpoint, the NHL to suspend Evander Kane is going to, it's a little bit higher than the NFL's credible evidence. It's something like substantial or significant evidence. It's a little bit higher. But unlike the NFL, Mark, there's an opportunity for cross-examination in the NHL's procedures. So you would have some fun with the NHL.
Yeah, it appears the due process has seeped into the NHL, unlike the NFL. So,
is there anything Mark gets more joy out of than grilling a commissioner who is not used to being grilled? He's used to people yesing him. Mark loves getting in the room with a guy who's got a few private jets and giving him the screws.
There's nothing like having a chat during cross-examination. It's just it's the reason I still do it. I love doing it. There's another story that's interesting to me recently, Dan, that before we break I'd like to talk about, not the least of which obviously has caught our attention here in Los Angeles, which is the pitcher for the Dodgers. But there's been kind of a turn of events in the last couple of days. Do you want to go through that?
Yes. So, this is the case of Trevor Bauer, who, if you're a baseball fan, Trevor Bauer is the reigning 2020 Cy Young Award winner, is the best pitcher in baseball. So you have allegations around the best pitcher in baseball. It's not just Los Angeles news. It's all of a sudden national news. So, Mark, obviously you've handled your fair share of criminal cases. This is not yet a criminal or civil case. Right now it's an application for a permanent order of protection. So here's the allegations. They're a little bit messy. So I'll just tell you as much as I can. Trevor Bauer talked to some female accuser.
He's a young guy too, correct?
He's a young guy. He's very outspoken. He's one of the most outspoken players in all of baseball on Twitter and a number of platforms. Signed with the Dodgers this year after kind of bouncing around a couple teams, but he's a fantastic pitcher. Allegedly met a girl online, exchanged Instagram DMs, went to text messages, and they had a consensual incident, which we'll say, we'll keep it PC, was a little rough, just a little consensual, but a little rough. Okay. They decided to meet again, and there's text messages going back and forth that it was okay that it was rough, all this other stuff. The second interaction is the one that's very problematic. The allegation is they had some rough interaction. At some point, she was choked unconscious, and that certain acts occurred while she was unconscious by Trevor Bauer, and that she, after the interaction, had a concussion, was kind of out of it, went to the hospital. And Trevor Bauer then, there's an allegation that she went to the police. There was a recorded phone call between Trevor Bauer and the police with her on the line, and that Bauer acknowledged doing some things. So I guess the only other point to kind of phrase it, Mark, and this was where I'd love to hear from you. And, the statement that came out from the lawyer on Trevor Bauer's side was so interesting. It said that essentially that any physicality between them was purely consensual. You and I know that you can't always consent to certain things, right? You can consent to things in a bedroom, but you get in front of a judge, that's not necessarily going to be deemed consent. So I don't know what you thought of his statement. I thought it was interesting.
Well, and then there's been a twist, hasn't there, in the last 2 days? Because there's been some allegation. There was a photo that was released, and I don't know who released it, but the photo, apparently now there is some suggestion, I guess, for lack of a better term, that the photo was either photoshopped or doctored or pixeled or in some way manipulated. The image was manipulated, correct?
Correct. Yeah, the photo that we first saw was really it was bad. Eyes had to be blacked out. It was that bad. The allegation now, I don't know how they're getting all these text messages. They must have someone cooperating that's a friend of the accuser, because they're getting conversations between the accuser and not Trevor Bauer, just different people. So she allegedly had said at some point that I'm trying to get I think it was a lot of cash. I don't know exactly the exact quote was. Do you have it, Gary?
I mean, I don't have that quote that you're talking about, but there was a quote that I saw that where she said to a friend, yes, it was consensual, but I didn't appreciate the black eye. So, right. So they're saying, that she's basically saying to other people in private, like, yeah, I didn't like how far it went, but it was consensual. And, that's obviously not the narrative that's being spun, in the media. And, presumably she wouldn't have gone to the cops and said that because they would have never then tried to get her to record a phone call with him.
It may be why nothing's been filed. I mean,
and that's what
generally, when they have what the call that Dan was describing is what's called a pretext call.
Right.
And what they do is when it's traditionally a he said, she said, sometimes an investigative technique in law enforcement is to put the accuser on with the accused and tape record the call. And there's a law enforcement exception in the code that permits that. And what they try to do is get somebody to concede or make a concession or an admission. There's various differences. And if they do that, that generally supplies what they think is something compelling for remember, this is the cop to the investigation, then they have to present it to a law enforcement prosecutor who makes the decision as to whether to file.
So this is something I wanted to ask you both about, because I'm obviously very, aside from this show, I'm really outside of the realm of the stuff you guys deal with. But to me, the indication that I saw was that obviously right after the police got involved, the MLB got involved, and they have an extensive investigative branch, I would imagine. I would assume all of these big leagues do. And the fact that they were slow to punish him or even suspend him made me think that they're seeing a larger story that they think is going to end up with him coming out okay on this, at least to some extent. I mean, am I just being cautious, being too optimistic?
Because a lot of times there are carve-outs, whether it's I'm not that familiar with the MLB bargaining agreement, but I do know that there are carve-outs in other professional league collective bargaining agreements that kind of press pause on the investigation when there's an active law enforcement investigation going on, because they don't want to get into a situation where they interfere, number one, and number two, they don't want to interfere from the accused standpoint. He's got certain due process rights. And if there's an active criminal investigation, you don't want the sports or the employer meddling in that.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, shortly after the criminal investigation became public, there was a bit of a scandal because he wasn't suspended for a few days.
Right. This is where it gets interesting. So there's Mark knows this very well from the NFL stuff. There's something called the commissioner's exempt list in football that allows you to be taken off the field, but you get paid. So paid leave, and there's no presumption of guilt. You're just taken off the field. Baseball has a very similar version of that. It's called the administrative leave list. So I don't know if we'll have time to get into it, but Deshaun Watson has not been placed on the commissioner's exempt list for what he's dealing with in football. Meanwhile, in baseball, Trevor Bauer has not been found guilty of any type of crime. There's no criminal charges. There's no civil case even, yet he was placed on administrative leave, and he's been there indefinitely. They keep renewing it every 7 days. So he's getting paid a lot of money to sit on the sidelines right now. So yeah, he's it's obviously innocent until proven guilty, but there's no it's not even a preponderance of the evidence or beyond a reasonable doubt. There's no court case against him, yet Major League Baseball exercised their ability to take him off the field. So the scandal, Gary, to your point, if you guys are listening to this in LA, Dave Roberts didn't really know what to do. That's the manager of the Dodgers. Trevor Bauer was supposed to pitch on July 4th weekend in a really big kind of high profile game. And Dave Roberts said, well, I don't really know what to do. He's not suspended. And he's innocent until proven guilty. So we're going to pitch him. And they kind of put the Dodgers, baseball put the Dodgers in a tough spot until they took him off the field. So, it's interesting. That's why you use the list to kind of take teams out of that potential tough situation.
Yeah, it's an interesting intersection, as you say, between sports, the law, the employer, employee. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to unpack there. I love having Dan on, but I've got a heart out. So this is a special bonus episode. We may have some frequency with Dan coming back on. Let us know.
We'll see.
Listen, this hair is meant for this podcast.
Well, that's
okay?
the exact.
So I'm gonna keep growing it big. You keep bringing me on. I'll keep growing it big.
That's the exact problem here, Dan. I'm supposed to be the one with good hair on this thing. I don't want you on outshining me. How dare you? No,
outgrowing you. I don't think it's shiny.
Well, Mark, thank you for your time, and we'll let you go. Dan, thank you very much for joining us. And to everyone else, we'll be back in studio for normal episodes, maybe even with a new look if you watch the video aspect. We've made some changes over at the studio that we're going to be debuting soon. So look forward to that, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, Mr. Lust. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. Stay tuned for more bonus episodes coming soon.